Imagine this. You wake up in a world where every choice you make has already been made for you. Your job, your beliefs, your desires programmed by forces so subtle you mistake them for your own thoughts. You stand in front of a mirror and stare into your own eyes, yet something feels off. You recognize the reflection, but there's a hollow behind your gaze, an absence where certainty used to be. Do you truly want the life you're living? Or has it been assigned to you? Fyodor Dostoyevsky knew this world. He saw it before it even existed. A century and a half ago, he predicted a society drowning in progress but starving for meaning, where the soul was traded for convenience, where man, despite having everything, felt nothing. He foresaw the existential fatigue of modernity, the slow decay of faith, the suffocating weight of free will, the terrifying realization that with nothing to believe in, nothing matters. What an irony! We have never been more connected, yet we have never felt more alone. We chase pleasure, yet we are haunted by emptiness. We seek liberation, yet we remain imprisoned in a world of our own making. The paradox is crushing. Technology liberates us from suffering, yet suffering was the very thing that made us human. We have conquered hunger, disease, and distance, yet we now grapple with a more insidious affliction, the loss of something we cannot name. Dostoyevsky spent his life unraveling this paradox, and his answer was both horrifying and liberating. He did not offer comfort. He did not promise salvation. Instead, he dragged us into the abyss of the human condition, forcing us to confront the darkest corners of our psyche. His characters, Raskolnikov, the underground man, Ivan Karamazov, are not just fictional constructs. They are us. They are the fractured voices within us that whisper at night when the distractions fade, the voices that ask, what if everything you believe is a lie? What if freedom is the very thing that enslaves you? What if progress is not salvation, but exile? You might resist this thought. The modern world has conditioned you to do so. You are told that happiness is just one more achievement away, one more possession, one more experience. But Dostoyevsky warned us. The moment we think we have escaped suffering, we will invent new ways to suffer. And worse, we will not even recognize that we are suffering at all. So, here is the great question, the one that lies at the heart of Dostoyevsky's vision of modern despair. What happens when man is given everything he ever wanted, yet feels more lost than ever before? The answer, as Dostoyevsky revealed, is more terrifying than we dare to admit. And it begins with understanding the hidden forces that shape our despair. The tragedy of modern despair is not that we suffer, but that we no longer understand why we suffer. In Dostoyevsky's time, suffering was a sacred path to redemption, a bridge between man and meaning. Today, suffering is seen as an error to be corrected, a glitch in the system of endless pleasure and comfort. We numb it with distractions, medicate it with entertainment, rationalize it with self-help mantras, but in doing so, we sever ourselves from its purpose. Dostoyevsky's characters reveal an unsettling truth. The deeper the suffering, the more authentic the existence. Raskolnikov, in Crime and Punishment, believes himself above morality, yet his guilt consumes him from within. The underground man, in Notes from Underground, rejects society, yet cannot bear his own solitude. Ivan Karamazov, in The Brothers Karamazov, challenges God, yet finds himself tormented by a world without him. These men are not victims of external forces. They are victims of their own minds. They are the embodiment of modern man adrift in a sea of freedom, yet shackled by the weight of his own choices. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the parts of us we refuse to acknowledge, the primal fears and suppressed desires that lurk beneath our carefully constructed identities. Nietzsche foresaw the death of God not as liberation, but as catastrophe, a vacuum of meaning that would lead to nihilism. Sartre's existentialism warns that without a given purpose, man is condemned to invent his own, and the burden of that responsibility is crushing. And yet, despite their warnings, here we are. The modern world has given us more freedom than ever before, and with it, an unbearable sense of isolation. We curate our identities through digital avatars, yet feel unseen. We chase pleasure, yet feel unfulfilled. We are told we can be anything, yet we have no idea who we are. Dostoyevsky understood this before the world even caught up. He saw that the real danger was not external oppression, but internal emptiness. His characters are not bound by chains, but by their own fragmented minds. And so are we. But what happens when this emptiness is left unchecked? What happens when an entire civilization forgets how to suffer, yet suffers more than ever? The consequences are not just personal, they are shaping the world around us in ways we cannot yet see. There is something insidious about despair, when it does not present itself as despair. When suffering is obvious hunger, war, oppression, there is a clarity to it, a rawness that demands confrontation. But what happens when suffering disguises itself as progress? When despair wears the mask of happiness? This is the silent tragedy of the modern world. Dostoyevsky knew that the greatest suffering is not inflicted through external chains. Illusion of freedom. The underground man is free from obligation, from moral constraints, from societal expectations. Yet in his freedom, he festers. He lashes out, not because he is oppressed, but because he is drowning in the abyss of his own meaningless existence. Today, we see this phenomenon everywhere. The endless scroll through social media, promising connection yet deepening loneliness. The pursuit of wealth, of status, of fabricated desires that, once obtained, leave us emptier than before. We exist in a world of abundance, yet we are starving for something we cannot name. Neurologically, our brains are not designed for the overstimulation of modern life. The dopamine loops of social media, the constant bombardment of news, the infinite choice of these create a paralysis, a numbing effect that dulls our ability to experience true fulfillment. Like the underground man, we become trapped in a prison of our own making, unable to escape the comforts that keep us shackled. And then there is the cultural conditioning. We are told that happiness is the ultimate goal, that suffering is an obstacle to be eradicated. But Dostoyevsky challenges this notion. What if suffering is not an error, but a necessary condition of human existence? What if, in removing suffering, we have removed the very thing that makes life meaningful? The consequences are all around us. Depression rates have skyrocketed. Anxiety plagues even those who seemingly have everything. We see an epidemic of loneliness in a world more connected than ever before. These are not random occurrences. They are symptoms of a deeper affliction, the crisis of meaning that Dostoyevsky warned us about. And yet, despite the weight of this despair, there is a way out. But it is not found in pleasure, nor in distraction. It requires something far more radical, a rebellion against everything we have been taught about happiness and suffering. And that is where our journey takes us next. This crisis of meaning has consequences more insidious than we realize. It does not arrive as a loud catastrophe, but as a slow corrosion of the human spirit. It manifests in ways we fail to recognize: an epidemic of anxiety, a culture of perpetual distraction, an unshakable feeling that something is missing, yet we do not know what. We have become a civilization addicted to stimulation. The moment silence creeps in, we scramble for our screens, desperate to drown out the unbearable weight of our own thoughts. Every spare second is filled with noise, every void packed with entertainment, every discomfort numbed with consumption. Why? Because to be alone with oneself, to truly confront the emptiness, become intolerable. Dostoyevsky foresaw this. He knew that when man loses his spiritual anchor, he does not simply drift the plummets. In Notes from Underground, the protagonist mocks the utopian dream of a world where all suffering is eradicated, arguing that such a world would drive man to insanity. Without struggle, without purpose, without something greater than himself to strive toward, man will self-destruct. He will seek chaos, sabotage his own happiness, and create suffering where none exist, because suffering, paradoxically, gives him something to hold on to. Is this not exactly what we see today? We live in an age where suffering has been minimized, yet self-inflicted torment is on the rise. Mental illness, addiction, existential dread, these are not the problems of an impoverished world, but of a world drowning in excess. We create new anxieties, new identities to cling to, new battles to fight in the absence of real struggle. We fracture ourselves into ideological tribes, invent enemies, wage digital wars not because we need to, but because we have forgotten how to exist without conflict. Even love, once the sacred refuge of the soul, has been reduced to an algorithm. Romance is swiped through, optimized, commodified, measured in instant gratification rather than deep connection. And yet, the more options we have, the lonelier we become. We are surrounded by people, yet starving for intimacy. We are free, yet paralyzed by choice. What happens when a world that promises fulfillment leaves us emptier than ever? The answer is unsettling. Some will seek refuge in nihilism, some will drown in distractions, and some, like Dostoyevsky's characters, will descend into madness. But there is another path, rebellion, a way to break free. And to understand it, we must shatter everything we think we know about happiness and meaning. Here is Dostoyevsky's final revelation. Despair is not the enemy. Despair is the doorway. The very thing we run from: our suffering, our uncertainty, our guilt is what makes us human. It is not something to be eliminated, but something to be embraced. It is through suffering that we find meaning. It is through doubt that we find faith. It is through struggle that we become real. Modernity tells us that we can construct our own meaning, that we can manufacture our own truth. But Dostoyevsky warns us, meaning is not something we create. It is something we discover. It is something we suffer for. It is something sacred. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the answer we have been searching for all along.